Let's all turn to a portion from scriptures, Hebrews chapter 4, and we'll read from verses 14 to 16. Hebrews chapter 4, 14 to 16. Seeing then that we have a great high priest that is passed into the heavens, Jesus the Son of God, let us hold fast our profession. We have not an high priest which cannot be touched with the feelings of our infirmities. He was in all points tempted like as we are, yet without sin. Let us therefore come boldly unto the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need. May God give us the wisdom to study from this passage. It was April 18, 1521. This small, heighted, bad-mouthed monk by the name of Luther would stand in front of Charles V. Luther was called in front of this particular diet, this particular council, and Luther was asked that he would have to recant of all that he has written. It was a well-planned move. Every day Luther would have to stand in front of the greatest entity of that part of the world, the emperor himself. People made a huge queue to see this man who had shaken the entire world upside down. And when Luther stood for the first time in front of the people, he got absolutely scared. Luther was asked to recant. And Luther knew if he says something wrong, he's not going to get life. He's going to get death immediately, and no one's going to be able to save him. So the first time when Luther stood, Luther simply said, I need one more day to think about it. He got a day. The next day, when Luther stood, and everyone was thinking, if Luther was in his right mind, and Luther understands what is good for him, Luther would recant. But if you remember, and I know you all do, this is what Luther said. He said, I cannot and will not recant anything. But to go against conscience is neither right nor safe. Here I stand, and I can do no other. And so help me God. Amen. How come Luther overnight make a statement like this? We come to a passage in Hebrews in which we see a picture of the Lord Jesus Christ now as a priest, the great high priest. And if you go with this entire section, the section goes all the way till almost till chapter 11, barring a small section in chapter 6. The whole section is about the great high priest, Jesus being the great high priest. And this is exactly where we understand that doctrine and real life would come together in this passage. Remember, I started with Luther. I've not ended what I was saying. We'll end the Luther's incident possibly at the end of this chapter, God willing. So what do we see here? We see Jesus shown to us as a high priest. And in modern religion, particularly since we come from the Persian side of things, the idea of a priest does not really become important for us in a modern idea. Most of our churches do not have priests. We might see priests among the Hindus or other religions, but we really do not see as priests as important to Christianity. And so perhaps the importance of priesthood is missed. A better way to understand the idea of a priest is to understand the idea of a mediator. Now, even though priesthood or priest may not be required by us, but mediator is required by us almost every day. Right from our offices, we have someone who would stand between us and our bosses. We'd have someone who stands between us and our clients. You'll have mothers who stand between the children and the fathers. You would have all kinds of mediators in the world. And when you look at the mediator and we look at the idea that priesthood, the resemblance and the importance is very easily understood. How important is the idea of having a mediator or having a priest. Now, when you look at this section, I want you to see that the section is extremely easy to understand. And there are two commandments given to us, two exhortations given to us. And the entire framework of the passage is based around those two exhortations. When you look at that, the first exhortation is, read that, therefore, verse 14, we have a great high priest that is passed unto Jesus into the heavens. Jesus is the Son of God. So the first exhortation is, let us hold fast our profession. Some translations will have a better word, confession. Let's hold fast our confession. That's the first exhortation. The second exhortation continues. For we have not a high priest which cannot be touched with the feeling of our infirmities, but was in all points tempted like as we are, yet without sin. So here we come to the second exhortation, verse 16. Let us therefore come boldly unto the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace and help in the time of need. So we have two exhortations. First exhortation, that we hold firmly to the faith we profess. And if you are thinking in terms of where we started with Luther, and Luther had to give a reason. He had to state his confession, right? And Luther did the confession. But we're going to study what made it possible for someone like Luther, in the middle of the greatest infirmity that he's going to face, death, to stand up and speak like that. As I started, Luther was far from perfect a man. If you read about Luther, you'll understand how evil a person Luther thought of himself and his tongue. But there was someone greater than Luther to help Luther in the confession. And that someone greater is what the text speaks about. Seeing then that we have a great high priest that is passed into the heavens, Jesus, the Son of God. The great high priest. Now, we read about the priesthood in the section today. Now, if you remember your Old Testament, you'll find the priesthood was extremely important. Like turn to Exodus chapter 31, verse 10. You'll find, and the clothes of service and the holy garments of Aaron, the priest, and the garments of his son to minister in the priest's office. So you have the term priest. At other passages, you'll find the term the anointed priest, right? Same priest, but here the term is a little different. Like if you turn to Leviticus 4:3, you'll find if a priest that is anointed does sin according to the sin of the people, so there is an anointed priest. Then when you turn to 2 Chronicles, you'll find a new term, a chief priest. And finally, you'll find the term the high priest. Turn to 2 Kings 12:10. 2 Kings 12:10. And you'll read this. It was so when they saw that there was much money in the chest, that the king's scribe and the high priest came up. They put up in bags and told the money that is found in the house of the Lord. So you have the high priest. Now, what are the things about the priesthood in the Old Testament that we need to understand? First, priesthood was hereditary. And everything in that priesthood was important for the people to realize. Like in the morning today, when we read the passage of Numbers, you found something interesting. They had to tie something to the aprons. What was that? A blue. Did you think why? I mean, that was the decoration that they would have around. Why that blue ribbon? Why that blue ribbon? I know every time we read the Old Testament and we say Jewish people and their nonsense, let them continue. Thankfully, we don't have blue. Why blue? Quality. What else? What is the color of the fabric that covered the tabernacle? The color of the dress of the high priest. The blue, the ribbon, was to show them about the covenant of God. That even when they go outside the world, they should not forget the family that they belong to, the priesthood that they belong to. The color blue was indicative of that. Meaning, even if they go out, Israel was not to forget that God has already called them as a royal priesthood. You need to remember this. The idea of a royal priesthood did not come in the New Testament. It was not that the people of God in the New Testament now became a royal priesthood. It was Israel as a country was called as a royal priesthood of God. And every time they went out, wherever they went out, the blue tag will show them that they belong to a priesthood of God. They belong to a God who has to keep the commandments. So the priest, the priesthood was given extraordinary attention in the Old Testament. So would you find it in the New Testament, in the book of Hebrews. And everything which was done in the priesthood was important. And if you remember, what was the work of the high priest? He would go where? He would go into the Holy of Holies how many times? Once in a year for the Day of Atonement. And possibly the greatest title for a priest to be done and the greatest job for the priest to be done and the most difficult job for the priest to be done is given. Now here we find the entire theme of Hebrews. So if you want to look at this small section, one particular commentator says this, that these 3 verses is actually the capsule of the book of Hebrews. These 3 verses is what the book of Hebrews is all about. If you understand these 3 verses well, this is exactly what the entire book of Hebrews speaks about. Jesus being the high priest, Jesus being the Son of God, Jesus finishing his work and sitting at the right hand of God and being the throne of grace. This is in capsule the whole of what we can study. So what are we studying about Jesus? Here's the idea. First and foremost, Jesus can sympathize with us. Why? Because Jesus, it says, is tempted in always like we do. Let's speak about this. The text says Jesus was tempted in all ways like we are done. Right? How many temptations did Jesus face? How many times was Jesus tempted? Some people are tempted to say 3. So how many times does the Bible say Jesus was tempted? 3 times. That's going to be easy, right? Because the text says the devil stopped troubling him from that time on. In the Garden of Gethsemane also he was tempted. What other places was he tempted? When the Pharisees came to him, asked questions, he was tempted. What other places was he tempted? With a bunch of 12 jokers around, he was tempted. Remember that? When he had to tell someone his favorite, Peter, what did he tell him? Get behind me, Satan. What other time was he tempted? Garden of Gethsemane. Why was he tempted in the Garden of Gethsemane? What is the temptation? To leave the work because the coming death or the coming activity on him would be extremely dreadful, even for the soul of the greatest on the earth. Right from the beginning of his life on the earth, he was continuously tempted in every manner which is possible. Every manner. So let's not reduce this temptation down to a few things. I have heard people say that, what is the problem? Christ, we very strongly believe that Christ was tempted, but Christ could not sin. We understand that. Christ could not sin because Christ is God and God cannot sin. But the reality of the temptation does not go off. Many people have this habit of saying Jesus was God. Jesus knew that he will rise up from the dead. So what was wrong for Jesus to get beaten up or troubled or die? Because he knew that he is going to get a new body, he is going to get resurrected. So facing death to Jesus was extremely easy, right? Yes or no? Do we believe that we will be resurrected? Yes. Does the tooth pain trouble us? Yes. Even though we are confident that we'll get a new body, we'll all get scared for that very thing that our body is going to pass through. No different from the Son of Man. So he was tempted in every way, and that's the reason he can sympathize with us in every possible manner. Second, we understand that when we look at Hebrews chapter 7. We're not going to turn that now. We understand that his priesthood is eternal. Jesus Christ is going to be a priest forever. So, what is this passage as the starting point telling us? First, let's look at verse 14 again. Seeing that we have a great high priest that has passed into the heavens, Jesus, the Son of God, let us hold fast a profession. So here is the high priest who has passed into the heavens. Now, two ways to interpret this text. One, any translation that says differently? One translation will say passed through the heavens, and some translation would stop at gone into heaven, which is not accurate translation. Here, the idea is Jesus has gone through heavens. And if you understand in context, when you look at the Jewish writings, you'll find different heavens. So you have the first heaven, second heaven, and the third heavens. Usually, the idea of heavens was writing from the sky all the way up till glory. And Jesus, we remember when we read about his resurrection in the book of Acts, that he was taken up into the heavens. Now, here's the point: Jesus Christ, our true high priest, has passed into the heavens, and just Jesus has become Jesus, or say, is Jesus the Son of God. Now, because you know that Jesus suffered everything, tempted in every way, taken up to heaven, that's the reason you have to hold fast to your confessions. Because you're confident that Jesus has been raised up from the dead, this Jesus is the Son of God, that's the reason you need to hold fast to your confession. In the worst time that I face, in the worst difficulty that I face, what is the confidence that I have? The confidence is Jesus is the greatest confidence. There is no other confidence that we can have. Confidence cannot be how good is man. Confidence cannot be how good I have been till this time. Confidence cannot be what I've learned till this time. The confidence of man will always be Jesus, the Son of God, who is in heaven. That's the important part. When we look back at every incident, we understand this. Come down to verse 15, and we'll take this a little further. So he says, why should we hold on a profession? Because we do not have a high priest who cannot be touched with our infirmities, but is in all points tempted like as we are, yet without sin. So if you are tempted, and we realize and we speak specifically about the bodily worries that Jesus had, even in the passage that we read today from the gospel, there was a time when they decided to stone him, right? And there were the bodily infirmities that was pushed against him from all areas. And this writer of Hebrews is writing to a group of people who are being tortured, who are being butchered, who are being killed. It's very easily understandable if you can remember Hebrews chapter 11. Remember that when you went a list of people in the church who were tortured, who were killed, and the text ends by saying the world did not deserve a people like this. So to a people who are really troubled, the most important demonstration to them to stay in line, to stay on the word of God, is only one idea: that Jesus is the high priest who has been tempted like all manners in the way we are tempted, but he was without sin. What is the way a Christian can stand up? What's the way a Christian can be confident? Let's not forget where we started. He is the high priest. Now, I want you to remember the Jewish mindset. A high priest or the chief priest can go into the temple only once. But there, this high priest was between them and God. Jesus was the high priest. Right? Is there a difference between Jesus and the other high priests? What is the main difference? Jesus was sinless. One difference. What else? He's God himself. What else? Doesn't have to go every year. Okay, what else? He's offering himself. What else? Why did they have to go every year? Sorry? No, why did the priests have to go every year? No, because they really never met God. You understand that? The chief priest was always there in the middle between them and God. It was till Jesus came, it was like Jesus being the mediator, unlike the chief priest, he actually took them to God. Till that time, who will die when the sacrifice is wrong? Chief priest. Who will not die? Israel. Israel is still outside. But in this case, Israel is going in front of whom? In front of God. Someone has already died and they will not die. Now I'll tell you why this is so important. When they face God, they'll come to God and they see the throne of God. When they come to the throne of God, they're supposed to see judgment there. When they come to the throne of God, they're supposed to see their sin there and death there. But because Jesus is a mediator and completely different from the priests that have gone before, he has actually opened that gate and made them see God. But here's the problem. When they see God, they have to see a God on the throne as a judge. Right? They have to see justice there. Read verse 16. Let us therefore come boldly unto the throne of grace. They have to see what throne? A throne of justice. They were supposed to see death on that throne. But because Jesus is the high priest, now it is said, let us come how? Boldly with confidence, because that throne where you were supposed to see justice, you are seeing grace. You're seeing grace. The greatest aspect that we have, because Jesus is there, is because that is the only way we can hold fast our profession. The word hold fast in Greek is important. It's a word that has been used for someone holding something very tightly. Remember the Lord after resurrection, Mary holding him tightly, and so the Lord has to say, do not hold me because I'm not gone to my Father. The idea was holding in so tight a manner that you're not ready to let go. That's how a Christian holds to his profession, his confession. Nothing is more important than that aspect of that. You find the same was repeated when the lame or the leper holds on to Peter. It's the same manner in which nothing is more important for their life than that thing that they're holding on to. And that's what for a Christian. For a Christian, nothing is more important that he holds to this idea of the confession that he's holding to. So what should we do? So let us therefore come boldly, verse 16, unto the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy. We come to the throne of grace for only one reason, that when we come to the throne of grace, knowing that Jesus is already there, he is the high priest, we are confident that we will not get judgment, but we'll get mercy. But that is possibly to the end of the world, right? That's possibly when I die and when I see him. That's possibly when the last judgment comes in and when I see him. So many times, what is the importance in my life at this point that I know I've got salvation? How does it change? Or what does it look like for me in this life? Remember Luther. What gave Luther the confidence on the second day to say what he said? What gave Luther the confidence to speak that I will not do anything against my conscience and against the word of God, and so help me God? What gave Luther the confidence? Read that verse. Let us therefore come boldly unto the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need. And grace to help in time of need. In the weakest moments. Remember these two exhortations. When your body is being put through fire because of your faith, remember these two exhortations. First, hold on to your faith. Hold on to your confession. It's not going to be easy for any one of us. If someone tells you, and we discussed this last time, if someone tells you life is going to change after you become a Christian and everything is going to be good and you're going to be rich and wealthy and prosperous, that's a lie. The Lord never told this to Christians. In fact, the Lord told them that your life would become much more difficult and your own family will hurt you. Your whole family will be your enemy. As a Christian, if the master was troubled, the disciple will be troubled. If the master was put on the cross, the disciple will be put on the cross, and that's testing. But in the worst of the situation, the two exhortations should never go from our minds. First, we'll hold fast to what we are confessing. And we should approach daily unto the throne of grace. Now, this approaching the throne of grace is not a one time activity, it is a continuous activity. It's an activity that, as a Christian, we approach daily to the throne of grace and understand what Christ has done for us. That's what happens. A Christian cannot live his life, cannot live a single moment of his life without looking through the lens of salvation, without looking through the lens of the cross. Every day, a Christian has to approach the throne of God. Every day, a Christian should come there and stand and see and feel that am I under the judgment of God? And then the word of God will console him that no, where you're standing now is a throne of grace and you will have mercy there. And when you have mercy, that's what the verse says, and you find grace to help in the time of need. Brethren, each one of us will be fighting a fight in this world. For the outsiders, it looks like a losing battle. There are times when I worry about when we tell people the truth, and people, even among the Christian circles, would poke fun at us and say, they are a group like this or they are a group like that. There will be others who have changed from the initial background to a new faith, and they'll see them fighting with their own families at hand. There'll be people poking fun at you. There'll be Christian choices you would be making as a husband or as a wife, and the world would tell you, no, this is a stupid thing to do. You can't work like this. But trust me, the only way you can find comfort is to know that at that time when you consider yourself to be weakest, and the time when you think everything is fainting and everything has become completely dull and you're not able to understand, the only hope for you and me is to go into the throne of grace, remembering that there is a chief priest who's standing there for us forever. We started today with that one verse in 1 John 15. Remember that? Little children, keep yourself from adultery. Now, that's a very interesting section. John is always a very interesting writer because John has already given something to them which is of immense importance. He's already told them what eternal life is. Then what is the reason John at the end has to give a single liner that keep yourself from idols? It does not really make sense till you understand how easy it is for men to create idols. How easy it is for men to create idols. Here's what happens. We have a tough day and we come home. It's a really difficult day at work and we come home. All of us do that. All of us have a trouble. What should be our greatest solace when we come home and we want to call it a day? Some of us would take great pride or great happiness to play with the little ones at home. Right? That would be the way we unwind. Some people would think coming back home and seeing a couple of movies in your house would actually be a good way to unwind. Right? People can have different ways to unwind. Someone can think having a good food or a good drink would be a way to unwind. But have you noticed what has happened all of a sudden? You have automatically created an idol. You're supposed to come back home tired, and the only way you understand that my tiredness is going to go, but turning to someone who has promised rest to me, not only for my body, but also for my soul, which is probably more tired than the body. But we all of a sudden land up making things which we really do not understand is an idol of our own creation. And it's easiest for a person to create idols. But when you are tired and when you're really looking for rest, the only thing to do is turn to God. Come realizing that we have to come into that throne room of grace in the heavens, not fearing judgment. We come to the throne room of grace being sure that here we'll get mercy. Let's look at that verse again. Let us therefore come boldly unto the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need. We come boldly, something that the priests of the Old Testament would have not known. they would have not known, because they're very sure one wrong move and what will happen? They will die. And if the bell stops ringing, someone will have to pull them out. But for us, the idea is clear. Come boldly unto the throne of grace and keep yourself away from idols. That's the greatest thing that the high priest has done for us. So how did Luther do that? How did Luther do the unthinkable? When he knew that there was not a single person who could help him, even if there were people who could help him, no one was greater than the emperor at that time. First time, Luther didn't know what to do and got scared and said, give me some time. But the second time when Luther said, I will not go against the word of God, this is what happened to Luther. He found grace to help in that time of need. He got grace to help in that time of need because he knew who he had believed in. And he remembered that Jesus was tempted in exactly the same manner. Bodily death was something, a temptation. Killing him was something which he would fear. But Jesus did not go back. He did not turn. He did not sin and all of that. But what happened? He not only won, he's standing as a victor, allowing us to come to God with complete confidence. That's why a mediator is essential. So even if we do not understand the importance of a priest, please remember, without a mediator, you cannot stand in front of God even today. But what is different is the chief priest or the high priest of the Old Testament really could not bring you in front of God. Jesus has brought you in front of God and has brought you in front of the throne of grace. In your worst night of trouble, in your worst night of misery, in your worst night of temptation, what you have to do is turn and see only one person, Jesus Christ. And see him, not someone who's dying, but seeing someone who's dead and is victorious and standing in front of God and allowing us to come in front of God and pray and thank him. Let's look to God in prayer and let's ask God to help us find grace at the time of need. Precious Heavenly Father, thank you for this word. So many times, Lord, we read these things and realize that Jesus is a high priest. Do we really live a life, O Master, which we understand that we are going to face God and we are facing God every day? We stand in front of the throne where all the people in the world deserve punishment, deserve judgment, deserve death. But that throne today, O Master, because of your Son, because of my brother, our Lord Jesus Christ, who's not ashamed of us, who's not ashamed to call us brethren. Thank you, Lord, that that throne of judgment has become a throne of grace. From where revenge should flow, we see mercy flow. From where anger of God should flow, we see love of God flow. Make us fearful of God. Make us fearful. Fearful that it is still the throne of God. He's still a God who judges. And so, Lord, when we stand there, help us, Lord, to bend our necks, fall in front of that throne and ask for mercy. Mercy, not because we deserve it, we do not, but mercy because of your Son, our great high priest, who has won, who's alive, who's gone through the heavens, who's seated at the right hand, and has made that throne into a throne of mercy. Many of us, Lord, are struggling because of sickness, struggling because of pain, struggling because of sin, struggling because of what the world is doing to us, struggling because of the desires and temptation that the world is showing to us. Help, Lord, that when we are struggling, show us the throne of God. Show us judgment that will come on every sin. And when we turn to your Son, O Master, show us from where grace and mercy flow. And that grace, it helps us stand in the worst of times. Grace that enabled early believers to stand for the truth and be happy to be burnt at the altars. Grace that people's tongues were cut, but they still wouldn't stop singing your songs. Grace when someone like Luther could stand in front of the King of the earth and be sure that his salvation comes from the King of Kings. And his heart will remain unchanging. And his words will remain unchanging. Because he got grace at the time which he required the most. Help us, God, in our weakness. And give us confidence, O Master, in the time when we require the most. It's not our training. It's not our health. It's not our education. It's not our wealth that will come to help us. In the time of need, it will be the grace of God. Grace of God alone. That will save us. Thank you for your Son, our High Priest, our King. And keep us, Master, at his throne, at his feet, forever. In his name, we offer this prayer. Amen.